Welcome to the Instagram stories for Wednesday, January 22nd. I'm your host, Daniel Hill. The head of Instagram has shared a bunch of videos talking about different things on the platform that you need to know. He's been giving Reels tips and tricks, which I'm going to share on today's episode, and answering questions like, how often should you post, which I will also be sharing on this episode. Then we will do the head of Instagram's Ask Me Anything from Friday. And after the rap song, I'm going to do a bit of Wednesday Waffle, where I talk about topics that I'm interested in that may or may not relate to social media news. All that and more on today's episode. But first, a word from our sponsor. Welcome back. The head of Instagram, Adam Mosseri, made a video sharing some Reels tips and tricks, and here's the clip.
Today, I wanted to do quick tips and tricks or best practices for posting Reels on Instagram. So a couple things to remember. 1, don't post Reels with watermarks or logos. They will get less reach. 2, keep your Reels less than 3 minutes long. It will also help with your reach. 3, use music or dynamic audio. Trending is great, doesn't have to be trending, but if the audio is engaging, it will help the Reel overall. 4, post regularly, which doesn't mean only at least once or so a week, maybe more, but also consistently in theme. If people know what they're going to get by following you, they're more likely to follow you in the first place. And 5, experiment, because what resonates now might not resonate in a couple months. And a great way to experiment is to use trial Reels, which allow you to post a Reel just to accounts that do not follow you, and then you can decide if it does well, if you want to upgrade it to your followers and to your profile. Hopefully this helps. Please let me know down below in the comments what else you'd like to see, and share this with anybody else who's trying to figure out how to use Reels more effectively on Instagram. See y'all soon. Peace.
Overall, I think that clip is incredibly helpful. If you've been listening to the show for a while, I don't think you've heard anything completely revolutionary in there, but I do want to call out that when he says experiment, he has a team of people helping him make this content. There are at least 5 people in the room with him when he films these videos. One's in charge of lighting, one's in charge of editing later and adding captions and so forth. There's a whole team. So if you don't have a whole team, don't feel necessarily the pressure to experiment the way he describes. Okay, next up, here is a clip from Adam Mosseri talking about how often you should be posting on Instagram.
I've got a lot of questions in the last couple of days about how much to post on Instagram. And so I did want to make sure you know that you should prioritize quality over quantity. But in general, posting more will help. The more you post, the more people you're going to reach and the more your follower count is going to grow over time. But don't burn out. Obviously, burnout is a real thing. Now, that said, if you post really infrequently right now, and you're thinking about posting way more, so say going from once or twice a week to 5 or 6 times a day, you do run the risk in that edge case of alienating people who followed you with a different set of expectations. So if you are in that edge case, so this is not for most people, I do highly recommend you use trial Reels. Basically what a trial does is it does not share with your followers and it does not end up on your profile, but it shares with accounts that do not yet follow you. And then the posts that do the best, you can decide to upgrade for your followers into your profile. That way you don't run the risk of frustrating people that have decided to follow you under a different set of terms. So try it out and let me know what you think. See y'all soon. Peace.
I think it's really important to keep talking about creator burnout. If you're not getting paid for each individual post that you're making, but you're spending a lot of time crafting them, it is very easy to get burned out by trying to do as much as you can and still thinking of it as a hobby if you already have a job and a family and so many other responsibilities. This is a topic I will continue to revisit in 2025, so be prepared to hear a lot more about creator burnout. The next video has to do with how the Instagram algorithm ranks content. This is really important to understand because the content that you make is going to be seen by a subset of people, but you want it to be seen by more people. So how do you game the system? Well, I'll let the head of Instagram explain.
I'm going to try and explain as best I can how ranking works on Instagram in a series of videos, and this is the first one. Because the more you know, the better you can leverage the platform and the more success you can have, and the better Instagram will be. So at a high level, there are 2 types of ranking on Instagram. There's one for accounts you follow. We call that connected reach. And there's another for accounts that do not follow you yet. We call that recommendations or unconnected reach. Now for both, the most important signals are the same 3. They are how much of a video we think someone is going to watch and whether or not we think they're going to like that video or they're going to actually send that video to a friend. And so what you need to look at is average watch time, likes per reach, and sends per reach. Now, if you really want to understand the nuances, likes are actually slightly more important than sends for connected content, and sends are actually a little bit more important than like for unconnected content, but time is the most important for both. So if you're trying to understand why one reel may have done better than another, check out your insights and look at those metrics. And if you're specifically worried about posting too much, I highly encourage you to take a look at our trials feature, which allows you to bypass the entire connected ranking system and just go straight to the unconnected recommendations. So you don't risk bothering people who have followed you with too much content, and you can just upgrade the content that does best to your followers and to your profile. More to come soon. Peace.
He mentioned about the trial reels there, and I do continue to think that that is the best way to get your content seen by people who don't follow you and who might never necessarily go to your page, but Instagram is going to show them your content because it thinks that they might like what you do. And based on that, those people might choose to follow you. That is the best way to game the system in 2025, in my opinion. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about what the most important feature the Instagram team is working on right now and the best way to connect with your followers. All that and more. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Let's get into the questions and answers from the head of Instagram. The first one, what's the most creative feature that the Instagram team is exploring right now? I love these kinds of questions because as a product manager, I'm always interested to know what is on a product roadmap.
I don't know if this is the most creative, but we are launching today this Friends integration into the Reels tab in a bunch of countries. So when you go to the Reels tab, if you tap on the little Friends in the top right, you'll go to a feed of Reels that your friends have liked or have put notes on, which is kind of an amazing way to see what your friends are interested in and to even start conversations from there. Because if you tap on them, you'll be able to just start a DM with them right then and there about that Reel. And this is because we really want Reels not to just be a lean back experience, but a participatory one, a social one. So check it out and let me know what you think.
I talked about that feature on Friday's show, likening it to the activity tab that we used to have on Instagram that went away in 2019. Next question. What do you think is the best tool to connect with my followers? Here's Adam's answer.
Unfortunately, there's not one answer for all creators. Now, if you want to reach your most passionate followers, I think the clear answer is broadcast channels because they will sign up and then you can go straight into their inbox every time you post and you can kind of bypass ranking and stories and everything. But in general, for most creators, it's going to be about figuring out which channels resonate the most with your audience. Are you someone who really gets a lot of distribution through stories because people are really interested in the kind of behind the scenes content you produce there? Are you more of a Reels creator and that does the best, or a photo carousel creator and that does the best? You got to experiment and figure out what works with your audience.
Let's go on to the next question, which is a really good one. Why does using audio help with reach? Before I play Adam's answer, I will confirm that this is true. If you post a photo on Instagram, just a regular photo, and you post that photo without music and with music, people will spend longer looking at the photo with music. Why? Great question.
Because reach is optimized for people who are interested in content. And we can't know for sure what content people are interested in. So we use proxies, primarily what they tend to engage with. Do they watch the video? Do they like the video? Do they send it to a friend? And music tends to make videos more engaging, or photos on carousels as well. So we see that on average, if you're adding music to your media, it tends to get more interactions and therefore tends to get more reach because ranking thinks it is more interesting because it seems to actually be more compelling.
I think the takeaway there is never post a reel, never post a photo, never post a carousel without music. It takes an extra 10 seconds to do it. The people who come across that content might have the volume off, in which case, no harm, no foul if they didn't hear the audio. But if they do have their earbuds in or they do have the volume up and they do hear the music, they're going to spend more time on the post. So that's a win. Always add the music. That's the takeaway. And the last question we're going to discuss, short captions or long captions, which is better? This is a good question. I will tell you that it's been a long time since I actually read a caption underneath someone's post that was longer than a sentence or two. I do see people who write in very long paragraphs, but I frankly am not interested in reading those. I want to see video content or photos. That's why I'm on Instagram. If I wanted to read things, I would go on Threads. Here's Adam's answer to which is better, short or long captions.
On average, it probably doesn't matter very much, but if adding a long caption really adds context to your content and really helps people understand your photos or your videos, it can help on the margins.
When he says on the margins, he means it doesn't help a significant amount. That is it for the questions and answers. After the theme music, I'm going to do something called Wednesday Waffle, where I talk about another topic that I'm interested in talking about for a couple of minutes. You can listen or don't listen. That's totally fine. But just know that on Wednesdays, when you hear the different music, that means we're going to do the Wednesday Waffle. That's how it's going to be. Thanks so much for listening.
I'm not yet a member of the Instagram team, but my podcast covers many Instagram themes. But the name, image, logos are trademarks of Instagram and the LCC in the USA and every territory. Everything I publish independently until Zuck returns my DMs and starts to pay my salary. Not sponsored or endorsed, no lies, no fallacies. I use their logo with permission, not malicious or callously. No trademark violation, filling all criteria. Follow me on Instagram or Twitter at Daniel Hill Media.
I've been thinking for a long time what I want to do with this podcast, how I can make it more interesting, how I can make it more exciting for myself. I started this podcast in November 2018. We just passed November 2024, so that would mean I've been doing this for over 6 years at this point. It's been great. The show's changed a lot. I've talked about a ton of different things that I never really thought I'd talk about. I never knew when I started this show that TikTok, well, Musical.ly at that time would become such a big deal and such a focus of the show. But I continue to want to make it interesting for myself, because if I'm just talking about the same topics over and over, I get bored. And I feel like if I'm bored, you can tell I'm bored, and then you don't really want to listen to that. One thing that I am very interested in doing is an in-studio podcast interview. I don't necessarily watch clips of people doing podcasts where they're over Zoom or over Riverside. It's very rare that I would watch something like that. But I do watch clips of people who are in a studio with microphones talking to each other. For some reason, that just feels a lot more connected, a lot more intimate, and I'm very interested in finding a way to do that. Now, I live in New Jersey, right outside Manhattan, and there are podcast studios in my area. I'm very interested if one of you who is listening would be interested in doing an in-person podcast. I can rent a studio. The studios in New Jersey are much cheaper than the studios in Manhattan. Some of the studios I've seen in Manhattan are like $250, $350 an hour, even more potentially. But the ones in New Jersey you can find for $75 an hour, sometimes even $50 an hour, depending on where they are and what kind of professional setup they have inside. So I'm very interested in doing that. If you listen to the show and you live in the New York, New Jersey area, or you're coming to the New York, New Jersey area, and you would potentially be interested in doing an in-person podcast, please send me a direct message, get in touch. I would love to chat about it. I'm happy to edit it, cut it up however you want. If you want to take the footage and cut it up, that's fine too. Anyway, let me know. I'm very interested in taking this podcast in an in-person direction in the future. And if you'd like to be part of that, let me know.